Good evening. I'd like to call to order this Brunswick City Commission regular scheduled meeting for Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. We can all stand for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Let us bow. Father God, we thank you for these moments that we have to come together to come to bask in your wisdom as we do the work of the people. We ask that you continue to watch over us, watch our moves, watch our deeds, and watch the decisions that we make, that they may uplift your name. In your son, Jesus' name, we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move on to the adoption of the February 1st, 2023 regular scheduled meeting or meeting agenda, but we have a small addendum from City Manager McDuffie. We want to talk about item 6, that it should not have been on there initially, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we want to make sure that that item is removed. Proper processing has not been taking place.
Okay.
And we need to make sure that that was not on the agenda. It was something that had been put on finance, and because it was on finance, it was put on tonight's agenda, but it should not have been.
Perfect. And just so we don't confuse the public, we still are working with St. Mark's Towers to ensure that we kind of move with those federal dollars.
Yes, but because of requirements through DCA, there are certain steps that has to be completed and approved before we can move forward with the following steps.
Perfect.
And this is one of the following steps.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We
I'll
will
make a motion to defer item 6.
Second.
hear in a first and a second. All those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, item 6 is deferred. We will now open up a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Here in a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those hearing none, the motion passes. Mayor Pro Tem Martin, good to have you on. I think that I heard your voice there.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to hear you. Good to hear you. We'll now move on to public hearings, alcohol license, Officer Brown. And if the two owners, you can go ahead and come to the front, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm presenting 2 new stores, which were previously the Amira Marts on Bay Street and First Avenue. One is A&S Market. The owner's name is Schmidt Patel. And if you guys want to speak with him now, and then I'll come back for the other one.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That would be perfect. Mr. Patel, you doing all right today?
Yes, sir. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. I know, just a quick question. I know, is the name of the business being changed? Or
Yes,
was it always A&S Mart, or did it used to be?
It used to be Amerimart.
Okay.
The name right now is A&S Market.
And has the ownership changed with that name?
Ownership change. Yes,
It
sir.
has. Okay, and so you're the new owner of that
Yes, sir.
facility. Do you know the previous owner? by
No.
chance? No? Okay, perfect. And have you and your employees, I guess this is a new establishment for you, maybe your first one.
Yes, sir.
And have you and your employees been through the training to make sure that you aren't selling to underage and things of that nature? What training do you take your employees through or yourself?
I didn't take any training, but I know the basics that who I can sell and who I cannot.
Okay, perfect. Do you plan to have any signage at the front of the store when they're checking out so that they will be aware of how old they need to be to purchase tobacco and
Yes, sir.
alcohol? And you'll also have that behind the counter for your
Yeah.
employees?
Yes, sir. I will.
Perfect. How many employees do you plan on having?
Right now, only one.
Just one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those are all of the questions I have. Any additional from the commission?
Not me.
So that's one including yourself, so that would be 2 persons.
2%. 2%.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
And just piggybacking off of the mayor, the actions that you have put in place to not have to come back before us and have made the mistake of selling to underage people? What measures do you have in place? I know he asked about the signage,
Mhm.
but we've had a couple of stores that have come before us in the last several meetings, and we're asking these same questions. And so yours can be one of proactive. Instead of coming behind the 8 ball, you're coming before us now. So if you don't have those measures in place, and something happens to that magnitude, then now we are giving you a forewarning of the potential of being fined if that happens, because you have the opportunity to be proactive and not reactive. Okay, so great, awesome.
And I actually think that's a perfect thing. You are aware of the fines and penalties if you do sell underage. So you've been made aware of those.
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions?
Are you new in town or have you been here for a while?
I'm new in town. I used to live in Richmond Hill,
Live where?
Richmond Hill, near Savannah.
Good, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Hearing no other questions, we'll open it for public comment if we have any. And seeing none, we'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the license for retail sales beer and wine for A&S Market, 1001 First Ave, Brunswick, Georgia.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Patel.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Oh, I did forget to ask what Commissioner, or what Mayor Pro Tem Martin would usually ask if she was here about milk and bread.
Thank you. That's awesome, Commissioner Harris. Thank you for taking the lead on that one.
It's mostly milk.
All right, and the next store, again, previously Mart on First Avenue. They were the previous owners that sold to an underage in September when we did our sting. And this is a new owner. Now the store is called Solar 108. Right, and this owner is Darshan Patel. I've been practicing names.
Good evening, Mr. Patel.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, wonderful. Thank you for being with us this evening. A couple of the same questions. Have you done one, how many employees do you plan on having?
No, I'm just working myself and one employee.
Two, okay. And have you yourself or any of your employees been through any of the training to?
Yeah.
make sure everybody's been through
yeah.
training, okay? And you'll have signage
Yeah.
in front and behind the counter that states the date
Yeah.
that someone
Yes, sir.
would be old enough to purchase. I think you said it was a previous infraction, but this is new ownership.
Yeah.
Do you have any connection with the previous ownership?
No, like nothing.
No, okay. I think, I'm trying to think of any other questions. Real quick, are you aware of the fines and penalties if you do sell underage?
Yeah.
Okay.
My question is, when was the purchase of the store made in conjunction with the infraction?
Sorry.
When did the change of ownership? Yes. So the infraction was at the beginning of. Oh,
The sale was done September last year.
okay.
All the other ones.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. That's.
That's right at the corner of George Street, correct? George and Bay.
Yeah.
Are y'all still pumping gas there?
Yeah.
Okay. And I have to ask the question if you're going to also have milk and bread available at the convenience store.
So you have milk, bread, and eggs?
No.
No, you're not gonna sell milk, bread, and eggs?
No. Yeah. I have. one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I confused. Sorry about that. A little bit confused. I sell.
Thank you.
This is the location that's off of Bay Street.
Not this. This one is First Avenue.
No.
Okay.
Wait, sorry.
So
He was, so he was over, so he,
Yeah, that's. what I got.
1008 Bay Street is my location.
okay,
That was the first ad.
Mhm.
near Carpenter Street. Okay.
Well, it's at George and
One sitting down.
it's been an Amerimart, correct?
Used to, yeah. The old name is Amerimart.
Yeah, so Commissioner Roll, it's off of Bay at George,
Okay,
near Hanover Square.
Any additional questions? I do have one question. This may be for either the officer or Brian. How do we handle I guess convenience stores that have gambling machines? And does that change on-site consumption? Does that change anything at all if you have gambling machines inside of your?
Well, if it was a convenience store with a coin operated, they're called coin operated machines under the law. It'd have to be off premise consumption only. So there wouldn't be an allowable. I believe the law prohibits on premise consumption at a convenience store that also has coin operated machines. And then coin operated machines are also governed by an entirely separate section of the code that limits how many they can have on site, where they're placed, and the license is required to place those in there. But our specific ordinance does not address if there's coin operated machines in the convenience store.
Okay. That was just a side question. Any additional questions for Mr. Patel?
No,
so Brian, that means that if someone is on the gambling machine and they purchase like a Budweiser or Bud Light from the store, they cannot sit at the machine and drink the
They
beer, right?
cannot.
Okay.
That is correct.
Do either of you all have coin operated machines inside of your premises?
Well-
You do? Are you ensuring that there isn't on-site consumption of that alcohol? Okay. I would say under new ownership, we know people in that general vicinity who have had some issues with that current location, with people consuming on premises, relieving themselves close to their homes and things of that nature. So as new ownership and selling alcohol, it just asks that you keep an eye on that to make sure if they're playing those coin operated games that they're not consuming alcohol and that there's also no loitering in that spot. Perfect. Any additional questions for Mr. Patel? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion. Or, sorry, public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, we will open it for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve Solar 8108 for retail sales of beer and wine at 1008 Bay Street, Brunswick, Georgia.
Hearing a first, do I have a second?
Second,
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We appreciate you, Mr. Patel.
thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, officer. With that, we will now move on to item number 3, consider approval of January 18th regularly scheduled minutes.
Motion to approve as presented.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll move on to number 4, consider approval of a supplemental agreement to the project framework agreement between the Georgia Department of Transportation and the City of Brunswick for additional funding for the engineering and design phase of the Boardwalk Trail project. Director Albertson.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
As you mentioned, this is a supplemental agreement for the TAP grant for the Glen Avenue Link Trail, which is the boardwalk trail from Overlook Park to the Visitors Club along the east side of Highway 17 there. You probably know we began design or we went and got a GDOT TAP grant, Transportation Alternatives Program grant back in 2020, I believe, to begin design of that project. At the time, they granted us $420,000, which required a 20% match. So that gave us $525,000 committed towards the project. The design contract, the overall design contract was about $1.1 million. So we knew we had a gap there. So we went back this year in this round of TAP funding, applied for and received an additional grant of $548,000. That also requires a 20% match, which would be $137,000. But that amount then would cover that gap to get us through the full design phase of the project and get us to the point of construction. So, and then that $137,000 that's our local match would be paid from our new SPLOST, the SPLOST 22 Trails and Boardwalks category. We've got anticipating about $3.5 million allocated in that category. So this is a small amount coming out of there. So this is just an item to approve this supplemental agreement to accept the $548,000 TAP grant from GDOT and commit to the 20% match to it.
Thank you, Director. Questions from the commission?
Well, you know me, I always have questions. So unless somebody else wants to jump in, I'll ask a couple of questions.
I'll take a shot, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, thank you. Gara, will the construction be done in phases once we, I'm obviously looking ahead, and we have a lot of expense going towards the design and engineering phase of it, understandably, because that whole section runs along the marsh. But was just trying to look at some kind of a time frame for construction and how that's going to be moved forward with, and from if it's going to be phased.
Time frame, our latest schedule update, we're looking at construction probably early 2025. So we've got another 2 years in the design process. As far as phasing, I think it probably depends on available funding at the time. We'll go back to GDOT and ask for TAP grant or some other kind of funding grant for construction purposes. So I guess it depends on how much they're willing to give us and how much we have available at the time.
And is there consideration being given to how we could partner with, I guess, DOT, because DOT owns the old visitor center, even though the Tourist Foundation has been very instrumental in preserving the structure of the building, where that could be a great location for a rest stop for folks that are on their bikes, their cycles, walking, whatever they're doing, where there's an outdoor area to be able to enjoy a picnic or refill water bottles, park your bike, etc. I didn't know and I know that's looking down the road a good bit, but just making sure that we take advantage of what's available and amenities to folks that are on that trail once it's built.
Could I make a comment on that?
Sure.
When the city approached the DOT regarding the visitor center in hopes of helping the preservation and restoration of the building, the one thing they were very adamant about was because of what they deemed to be a high risk ingress and egress area, they were very hesitant to expand or I would say improve the area to sort of encourage people to more foot traffic or vehicular traffic at the property. That was something they really wanted to see limited, because it's a very difficult ingress and egress. It's very difficult to access vehicular, whether it's vehicular or I think we're very nervous about that. So that was a comment that they made during our times of negotiating that lease.
Well, somehow we're going to have to overcome that, because if the bike trail leads you to, let's just say, the old Welcome Center, I mean, for those that want to continue over to St. Simons and go over the causeway, that's one thing. But then those that want to continue north along Highway 17, we've got to have an avenue that's conducive to people on bikes getting across the foot of the causeway onto Ward or whatever that's going to look like. So I'm hoping that that's all going to be taken into consideration.
I think that's where they were trying to steer the conversation, was to take it further up. If we were going to try to cross the causeway or that portion, I guess you would call it the causeway, would be to take it further up further from the intersection towards the light at Ward Street, and try to utilize that if that was going to be pedestrian or a bike path. I think that's where they would like to see it be done. And to try to sort of discourage those trying to access that triangular, because there's a lot of traffic. The 3 lanes are merging there, and then of course the traffic from 17 trying to get to the island. But yes, I think there's a way to do it. I just don't know if that, I think they did not encourage us to include the visitor center property in that plan. They wanted to, I think, see it be safer and probably moved up to that traffic light.
And I'm going to throw this out there too, because, when you look at the amount of money it's going to take just to get through the design and the engineering portion of it, notwithstanding the cost of construction, I mean, we're still at the mercy of GDOT as to, let's say, if the decision's made to do a roundabout at the very foot of the causeway, how is that going to affect what monies have been spent for this trail and or crossing over the causeway to get north on 17? I just, I'm not trying to cast aspersions on the whole project, but you do have to look at it realistically and know what the potential is in the future for what could happen. That's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think those are great questions for us to follow up on in the design phase. I agree that if that's gonna be the ending of the trail, we have to make it somewhat pedestrian friendly to either end there. I like the idea of a rest stop. I understand DOT with the traffic patterns that way, but we have to find a way to make it work for us. So I want to continue that conversation. The quick question that I had is, Director, this is just for the planning and design phase, and then we go to trying to recoup dollars from grants and other spaces for the construction side. Because we are putting so much, because we're putting some dollars into the front side of this on the design, are we already looking towards a myriad of funding streams for construction, or is DOT kind of the only spot we're looking for some construction dollars to make sure we actually complete this project?
DOT is the primary source that we'll look at, and I think that our thought is that they've given us, by giving us this amount that they have for design, they will continue with the construction process. But there's also other grant opportunities we can look at as we get closer to, recreation and outdoor grants and those kind of things.
Probably through the DNR,
you've
you've got some opportunity too.
Right, they're outdoor recreation programs and those kind of, so there's several avenues out there we can look at.
Okay.
But DOT will probably continue to be the primary source.
Okay, and I get that, because they're saying by investing this money, they're kind of locked into the project as well. They want to see it go to completion. Okay. That's the only question I had.
I got a question, and Garo, in any of the design, is there any way that any of this trail is going to keep water off of Highway 17?
No, sir, it's not intended to keep water off of Highway 17.
I didn't say it was intended to. I asked if it could. Why are we spending this kind of money and we're not as concerned with water coming out of that marsh as we are about people walking across it? I don't understand that. Really don't understand it. I haven't been involved with as much of this as some other folks have. But I guarantee you, if I had, that would be one of my key functions, would be to try to stop some of the doggone water from coming over that road over there, or whatever we do. And I got another question is, we're getting ready to approve a bunch of money on Talmadge Ave and that recessed area there on Macon Ave.
Mhm.
Can any of this infrastructure help with any of your flooding, the water going east there? Can any of it be?
The Macon Avenue project is certainly is designed to, are you talking about the tidal influence?
Yeah.
Entering?
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly the Macon and Talmadge project that's the basis of that design, is to reduce the tidal influence there in that neighborhood. So that certainly will.
Well, how about with your floodgates? Is it going to help with your floodgates?
I mean, it includes floodgates, is that?
But I mean, you'll have some elevation there that you wouldn't have if you didn't have this wall, perhaps. Is that in the design, or could that help?
Say again, the elevation that
Of your wall? Like I say, I have not been that involved with it, but wouldn't it help to get the floodgates up some?
we can't raise the floodgates because of the elevation of the topography in the neighborhood. You'd have to send the water uphill to do that. And we haven't figured out a way to do that yet. Still working on that.
Well, we'll sleep on it tonight. Maybe we'll wake up. You know.
They
I think this trail though is,
be there, so.
Go ahead.
won't the trail have the ability to have its own runoff directly into the marsh? I mean, that it's going to be on the marsh, basically.
Right, it will discharge runoff, won't be a lot of runoff from the trail, but it will discharge directly into the marsh, right? It will be discharging to the drainage system.
And I have one other question, and then I'll let the other commissioners go, but the anticipated revenue of 3.5 million, where did that number come from and what is that composed of? What does that look like?
For SPLOST, that came from our publication information that we just that was laid out for the ballot, for the referendum for the SPLOST. That was the.
Okay, thank you. I interpreted that as somehow somebody had done a study and said, if we complete this boardwalk, we can look towards an anticipated generation of revenue of 3.5 million because everybody will come and ride the trail. So thank you. Appreciate you setting me straight.
We can put a toll booth on one end of it.
Hey, why not? I like it.
How about the time limit, Gary? What do you think it is on this thing?
All the way through construction?
Absolutely.
Probably 4 years at best. I mean, we're 2 years away from beginning construction. So that's just because of the GDOT drawn out process. So yeah, but if we begin construction, say mid 25, you may be looking at a 2 year, year and a half, 2 year construction project there. So yeah, we got 4 good years, I would say, maybe 5.
And we're talking about exactly the north side of the exit of the Overlook Park there to the causeway is exactly what we're looking at, right?
Yes, sir. That's right.
This does not get you. How do you get from the old Brunswick boat marina there to this location?
Where the Spanky's Marshside
Yes,
restaurant is.
the old Brunswick boat marina. Yeah.
There will not be a sidewalk from there to this location. The sidewalk as it goes by that area is on the west side of the interstate or Highway 17 as it goes by the dog park and the parking lot there at the walking trail. So you would have to cross to get from our side, you would have to cross 17, go up and then cross back at the light.
Well, there's really no safe place there for a pedestrian, is there?
Coming from our side, there's not a marked crossing there.
Yeah. Should we be thinking about that?
I don't know if you have enough pedestrian traffic coming out of there to justify it, because you're gonna have to meet all the GDOT traffic and pedestrian warrants and all to be able to put a crosswalk there, and I don't think you have.
But you're
pedestrian
talking
counts
about
to do that.
years from now is what you're talking about.
Now or years from now. Yes, I don't think. Unless that site's redeveloped to generate more pedestrian traffic, I don't believe you have the numbers to justify a crossing there.
So you go the other side of the street and you cross over is what you do. And that's what our intention is for this.
I mean, just you're asking about people just specifically coming from that site.
Well, I'm saying how you gonna get over there, but I'm thinking about Marside being owned by the city of Brunswick. That is a city piece of real estate there.
Right.
So why wouldn't we want to use it with this trail or connect it with the trail?
We can, if we get to the point of redevelopment of that site and, but we're gonna have to show a significant increase in pedestrian traffic generation to be able to mark a crosswalk across there, I guess.
Well, I understand the intention of the old Visitors Bureau there. I really do. And I believe that should be an attainable thing, but I also think the incorporation of city property there that's already owned would be another feature that should be thought about in this design. And the use of that piece of property, as a matter of fact. So I just throw that out.
Yeah.
And I guess I can kind of see what Commissioner Kaysen is saying, when you're talking about the connectivity, just as we do with downtown and being intentional about the connectivity and the flow of traffic, be it by vehicles, whatever the mode of transportation is, if it's pedestrian. But so now looking from what we have there now and looking 5 years, 10 years, 15 years into the future, which none of us are probably be sitting up here. I'll be here.
I'll be here.
I'll be sitting up here. But that's something
Might not be
to,
sitting
I
here.
guess, to be reimagined or included in the process. So
It is, and maybe if that site turns into multifamily residential site, I guess is kind of what you're thinking. Maybe you build some kind of boardwalk there there's a little inlet, drainage inlet right there. Maybe you build something to hop across there rather than coming out and crossing the highway to the trail. Maybe you hop across there to Overlook Park, go through the environmental permitting rather than the GDOT permitting and just hop across.
Well, I would say that this has not been thought about in any short, any medium, or any long-term plans, and I think it should be.
Okay.
I really do. A city-owned property is sitting right there, and it's comprised of a good bit of square footage there. I'm not saying we stop trying to get the tourist in the old building there on the causeway. I think that needs to be done. I really do. I agree wholeheartedly with that.
And you got, I'm sorry.
I just gonna say, I really believe that for some reason we overlook Marside and the old Brunswick Boat Marina there. And I think that we need to be thinking about it.
Okay, we'll bring that into the conversation.
Yeah, because we have to remember that we are at the cuffs of getting our recreation department back. And so with the reimagining of how recreation looks for the city and within the city, some of that stuff can does need to start being envisioned at this point.
Well, I'll tell you a fact. I mean, I shot pool and played ping pong in that building. When they ran us out at 12 o'clock, when I was 10 years old, we walked right straight across there and went to the Brunswick Boat Marina and went, and there was a nice little island over there. We swam, I never had a boat, but I tried to ski out there and almost lost my life out there, but that was a heck of a recreational feature. It really was. I mean, it was awesome. It was, I wasn't smart enough to let go of the rope. You know, it's almost like if you keep hitting me, you know, I'll turn my other face, my other side, but so help me, I got hold of that thing and I was strong enough to hold on to the ski rope and they finally had you of it, let go, let go. Well, I'm here today because finally I heard.
Finally let go.
But it's there for us, you know, it's there and it's there for our future. So think about it, please.
Will do.
Garo, what's the width of the trail? Because that has a lot to do with whether it's truly multimodal or if it's just for cycling.
It will be a 10-foot clearance from rail to rail, which would meet the requirements of the East Coast Greenway and all of those agencies, those type agencies.
So pedestrians are already figured in basically at a 10-foot width, correct?
Certainly. That's right.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve supplemental agreement to the project framework agreement between Georgia Department of Transportation, the City of Brunswick for additional funding for the engineering and design phase of the Boardwalk Trail project.
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. All those opposed, hearing none, the motion passes. We will now move on to number 5. Consider approval of resolution number 2023-03, authorizing application of a coastal incentive grant for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources and to commit the City of Brunswick resources as a local match.
Okay, a little bit of history. You might remember back in, I believe, 2019, we applied for and received a coastal incentive grant, which we used to develop the Rethinking Runoff Plan, which is a plan of several sites. I think there's 28 sites in there of green infrastructure, low impact development measures to with the intent of reducing the stormwater runoff and the demand on our existing stormwater infrastructure, as well as improving, removing pollutants and improving the water quality of that runoff through infiltration. We completed that Rethinking Runoff Plan in late 2022, September 22, and we've it's been very well received around the state and the local area through the DNR, EPD, those folks, as well as the stormwater agencies. We've gotten a lot of good publicity out of the plan, and so this grant that we're looking at now is a grant to continue that plan. Like I mentioned, there were 28 sites in the original plan. We've got one of them has already been constructed at Liberty Ship Park, 2 others at the fire station and Goodyear Park are in the design phase, and we'll be constructing those this year. So at least 25 sites remaining. This phase 2 plan will further investigate those sites and more analysis, more in-depth analysis, and then develop more of those sites to the point of being ready for construction. With the original plan, they were developed to a conceptual level. This will develop them more for construction so that they are shovel ready. So this grant is a coastal incentive grant. The coastal incentive grants also require a outreach and education component. And with that, we intend to, as part of that branch of this grant, we intend to go to the neighborhood associations and conduct several workshops and provide them information and supplies for creating rain barrels and implementing rain gardens in their neighborhoods, which would also help reduce the runoff from the residential properties. I think there's been 3 or 4 rain gardens, I believe, already implemented in the Urbana neighborhood there. One right there at the Macon and Talmadge intersection you mentioned. And I think the residents, they've been successful and the residents have been happy with those. So we want to continue that program working with Georgia UGA Marine Extension and DNR, the Coastal Resources Division. So these coastal incentive grants are a 1-to-1 match. We'll be receiving, I believe, $34,000 from them. And we will provide our match. Most of our match will be through salaries and in-kind funds. We will be matching, I believe, about $7,500 out of pocket, which we will budget from our stormwater utility funds in the upcoming year. So this item is just a resolution to go ahead and apply for the grant and then commit to those funds and the match if we're awarded the grant. So.
Any questions?
Yeah, would this be a good, I talked to you about the Greenwood Cemetery,
Right. Mm-hmm.
that low laying area in there.
Mhm.
This would be a perfect place to help remediate that, wouldn't it?
Yes, that's exactly the type of projects that's included in here. That project, that particular site was not included in the original plan. So this is to kind of further that plan. But we'll still look at the cemetery site kind of on our own. And I think we can do that in-house at very little cost with our crews. Our guys are familiar with installing these type of BMPs and so we can do that.
This,
in-house.
we're talking about in Greenwood, where you go in and you take that left, it's so low in there. It's a shame that hasn't been fixed in years gone by. It really is. Here, you got ditching there, you got everything. This would be an answer for it. It really will.
So we're definitely looking at that kind of outside of this plan, but it is on our radar.
Great, great. I'll make a motion if you're ready for it. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution number 2023-03, authorizing the mayor to sign the resolution.
Here the first, do I hear second?
Second.
Here the first. and
Second.
Here the first and second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed,
Aye.
hearing none, the motion passes. Wonderful. We will now move on to number 7. Consider approval of a contract with the Woodard Construction Company for construction of the Macon Talmadge intersection drainage improvements project to improve storm drainage conditions at the intersection of Macon Avenue and Talmadge Avenue and the surrounding area.
Okay, we just kind of briefly mentioned this area already. Y'all are familiar with that area. I don't need to tell you the history of that. It is the number 2 project on our stormwater master plans priority list. But we have completed design of the project. We have gotten our permits in place. We got the GDOT permit for the portion that crosses there right away. We have the DNR permit in place for the outfall. We're waiting on the Corps of Engineers permit to finalize the outfall, but we expect to get that any day now. So certainly that will be in place by the time we're ready to begin construction. So with all that in place, we went out and put this project out to bid twice. First time around, we did not receive any bids. Second time around, we received 1 bid from Woodard Construction in the amount of right at $3.7 million. The project is intended to provide flood relief for that neighborhood where we'll be upsizing those pipes. Right now, there's, I believe it's an 18-inch pipe that goes from that intersection behind Popeyes, intersection Macon Talmadge, under the highway out to the marsh there. We'll be upsizing that to 2 36-inch pipes. So more pipes, larger pipes, so we can carry a lot more water out of that neighborhood, rainwater. The other problem, which we kind of briefly mentioned, was tidal intrusion there. Right now, if you were to go out there and look, that outfall is actually submerged. It's below ground level or marsh level out there. So the pipes hold water all the time, and the water has to build up to a certain level in the neighborhood to be able to push it out. So obviously that doesn't work. This project would open that end of it up, create a new outfall for it to discharge from the outfall location on out to the channel right there. And also equip the end of the pipes with tide valves on it to keep that water from coming back into the system at high tide. So it would help it dry it out, but also provide a lot more capacity for getting the stormwater out of the neighborhood. It includes piping on up, as Talmadge there, on up towards Niles, I believe, is the cross street at the end. So it includes about 2 more blocks of piping there and improvements along those neighborhood streets, and then some curb and gutter along Macon as it comes into the system to capture that water and direct it on down into the inlets there. So it's kind of a twofold improvement to the project. As I mentioned, we got the bid from Woodard Construction. They are ready to begin work as soon as we give them the go ahead. They will need to order their supplies, the precast drainage boxes and pipes and everything. It'll take several weeks for that stuff to get in. But one of the schedule constraints that we're working against is the GDOT plan to resurface Highway 17 there. They have plans in place and have already let the contract to resurface Highway 17 from the bridge all the way through town to, I believe, the light at 303. So, you know, I feel like if we don't get this in place ahead of them, they're not likely to let us cut their brand new road and put pipes under the ground. So we certainly working with them, trying to stay ahead of their schedule so that we get our pipes in the ground, they come behind us and resurface. We got a brand new road with brand new pipes there. So, so that's it. That's basically the gist of the project. The price is high. It's a little bit higher than we anticipated, but I think, you know, that's a factor of several things. It's just general economy, inflation, everything is high right now. Even though it's high, contractors are busy. These guys are not really looking for work. They're all that several us, the counties, surrounding counties are all putting out work right now. The state has work out there for them. You've got private developments like the Hyundai plant up there, which is drawing in a lot of contractors. So, you know, these guys have work. That combined with the high prices of just everything. You know, so I think that's a lot of the factors of the higher prices here. I don't know that we'll ever see prices back to where they were a couple of years ago, but I think that's just the world we're at now. So that's all I have on that.
Where are they going to stage all of their equipment and all of their materials?
We have not worked out the details of that yet with them. That'll be something we have to pick a site and, you know, kind of finalize that with the contractor as they get closer to.
And, you know, a major flooding, as we addressed while we were doing L Street, was that ditch that runs back behind the shopping center.
Yes, sir.
Is this going to help with that?
Not significantly, because those are just separate systems. There's maybe a little bit of runoff that comes from that basin there, but the ditch itself comes and turns east and discharges north of where this system comes through. So Not a significant amount of water coming from that basin all the way down to.
I remember the old ditch, the old ditch, when I was playing in the ditch, stopped right there about halfway behind the shopping center is where it stopped. I mean, it was. But we've had all that problem. I think of those folks in that Urbana NPA that have just had real problems right in there, just like they have on Macon Ave. But maybe, I haven't heard anything about it, so maybe what we did on L Street has helped with.
I think that probably took some water off of there by improving that area between the credit union and that body shop, that repair shop, pulling that water out of there and letting some of that water go in that direction. We piped part of that ditch too about a little while back, so that ditch was kind of growing and it started to encroach into some of those residential properties behind the subdivision or behind the shopping center. So I don't know if piping that allowed that water to move on through a little faster and maybe get out of there too, giving a little more relief. So.
Yeah. Okay.
And Mr. Transparent was here, he'd be able to tell you.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I said,
William Transparent.
one of the residents that
Yeah.
lives in that area, Mr.
Mhm.
Transparent,
Mhm.
because he's always getting on us and talking and making sure about the area, because his house is right behind
Mhm.
that area, and so that the flooding and stuff, and so. I
Well,
think
I've
that's
seen
what-
the water almost in his carport. I don't know that I've seen it in his
Right.
carport,
Yeah.
but I've seen it up over his
we're
driveway.
bad at that area. So hopefully.
That retaining pond there on L Street probably helped with some of that too, and the
I think
ditch
it
work
may
we've
have
done.
let
I
that
haven't
water
heard
out.
anything.
But this is a good opportunity, so while you're looking at that, go in and pull that assessment from that area into this process as well.
Yeah,
Just
we'll-
kind of revisit that area. again.
We'll make sure if there's anything we can do to kind of add to that, pull some of that water out there with this.
Do we have any sidewalks or anything like that planned, once we get all this?
No, so this project we didn't include any sidewalks in there. The only sidewalk,
Johnny. That creates more runoff.
I got you. Okay.
that is true.
It's nice to have a safe place to walk, though, let me assure you. Runoff or no runoff. That's all.
There, I have a question. It sounds like, based on what you've just told us, that the additional improvements to surrounding areas really look like they're going to occur more to the north, like you said, up towards Niles, not so much to the south along Macon Ave. Is that correct?
There will be improvements along Macon Avenue. They're more curb and gutter improvements rather than underground piping improvements.
Okay. And then with GDOT's improvements to Highway 17 from Sidney Lanier Bridge up to the 303 intersection, will that open up opportunities for us to do additional drainage improvements along that stretch, or not necessarily? I mean, if they're needed, I'm just asking if that creates a window of opportunity for us to do any additional, mitigation for runoff along the stretch in partnership with what GDOT's going to be doing as far as improvements go.
I think our biggest problem really along that area of 17 there is tidal influence. And we've got the grant project, the East Brunswick Tide Control Project, which has designed tide control devices for a couple of those outlets there along 17 in front of Lanier Plaza, and up there, I think it's the Cook Street outfall there in the curve, to prevent the tidal water from coming back in. So I think those are the biggest improvements that we can make there along 17, and those really won't be affected by or impacted by the resurfacing project.
Thank you.
You know, I'll just throw something out there again that would help tremendously on Highway 17 would be if we could get the silting out of the old Brunswick Boat Marina, then the water would have somewhere to go. When you got a high tide there, that you got the silt, and I don't know how many feet of water that basin will hold, but it's not very much. I mean, if we don't start thinking about it, you're gonna be able to put coastal outreach soccer over there is what you're gonna be able to do. I mean, it's literally that way. I'm telling you, when I was a kid, we swam out there, we skied out there. People older than me hydroplane, they actually had hydroplane racing right out there in that basin that we sat right here and let silt in.
Well, the causeway cut it off too, when they redid the causeway.
Right. The causeway's been there. I mean, it's been there. The silting has happened since the city lost control of that with the boats in the ingress and the egress and other reasons. But one of the major things with the lease that's there currently is that basin was supposed to have been maintained, and it has not been maintained. And the plan, if you ever read the plan for what was there, clearly showed that they intended to have boating in that basin, not just a restaurant. So, but it's something for all of us that need to be thinking about that. It's our responsibility to put that thing back like it was, and we're over and inundated, no pun intended, and trying to get water out of here every which way in a way that I see is to get that silting out of that basin and start working on it somewhere. Get a plan to get somebody's attention to do it. It's had my attention. I've not been able to get the attention of anybody else. But it's a major problem there, and it's going to keep silting in if we don't address it. Just like we've got over there on Macon Ave, and I lived in Urbana Park. We didn't have all the problems we've got there that we're getting ready to spend $4 million on when I grew up. You had a pond there where the shopping center is, and I used to swim in that pond. And I can tell you a whole bunch about the whole area over there, but we got to start looking at that basin there that is the old Brunswick Boat Marina with some of the answers, as well as money's going to have to be spent now because of the conditions out there. So please, I hope everybody will make a note of that because it's important. And it's not just over on Highway 17, it's the East River the same way. It's just the same way. It's not as bad on the East River, thank the Lord. So, if that's a bit of a digression, I apologize. I really do. But I think it's important to document it that that's our responsibility on the other side of the boat marina property.
We can have some conversations with DNR and kind of see what the permitting would involve for trying to dredge that, open that up a little bit.
It would
see where
sure
that can go.
be a tremendous help to us.
Director Albertson, I just got a couple quick questions. Want to say thank you, number one, to you and your staff. I know y'all been working on this a long time. I know previous commissioners have heard that neighborhood talk about how flooded it gets. So it's amazing to see movement in that direction to handle that. Mine is a little bit on kind of the itemized receipt side, and this is just questions. I truly am just asking what these things mean. It has $150,000 total price for mobilization. I just don't know what that means. And then there's also a $400,000 price tag for traffic control. And I was just wondering what those mean in the construction.
Those two items typically on contracts, they're lump sum contracts, and we joke with the contractors as that's where they hide their boat payments and their
I'm like, what is
kind
that
of thing. But no, they typically roll stuff in there like their bonding fees, their insurance fees, and sort of their overhead, and a lot of their admin costs go into mobilization. And sometimes traffic control as well. Traffic control on this one is going to be be tough, with all the traffic control out there.
Yeah.
Or all the traffic there, especially in the mornings going south towards the schools and in the afternoons going north back towards the causeway.
So when they say traffic control, do they actually mean an hourly paid person to wave people through, or is that kind of?
Sometimes that is, it's barricades, it's advanced warning signage, it's lighting, that kind of thing. But sometimes depending on the stage of the work, it may be an actual flagman out there stopping it and directing traffic. But, this thing's basically going to have to be built one lane at a time. So you close a lane, you put your pipe under there, you kind of temporary pave it, and then you have to redo all your traffic control to move to your next lane. And then same thing, you flip back to the northbound side. So there's going to be a lot of movement and all that goes into this traffic control there.
Okay. And I guess this might be a question for City Attorney Corey. When we have these contracts, is it normal or is it out of bounds to ask them to actually itemize how they spent $400,000 on that?
I mean, I think typically would ask for it itemized, but if it just depends on if the contract is lump sum or, it just depends on how the contract is structured.
Got you.
We
So
can
there
determine
isn't
structure.
any, once the contract's approved, and I'm all for it. I know this has to be done. So this is just me truly asking how it normally moves. There isn't a post-mortem kind of after you get done with the project to say, can we get a rundown of how that was actually spent?
No, again, it would depend on, how the contract is structured. So if it's not to exceed, if it's not to exceed this amount, or if it's a lump sum contract price, the contractor might need in their own discretion to move funds in different places. So I don't think we haven't typically done a as you said, post-mortem.
Yeah, that's the wrong
review.
wording, but.
But I don't think it's something we couldn't do necessarily.
And so currently, the way this contract is, these are lump sums. They aren't not to exceeds.
Right.
They are.
That
They're set up as lump sums.
They're set up as lump sums. And but we do have, if we changed it to a not to exceed, then they would have to come show us what they actually spent it on, or is that crazy?
Well, I think either way, I think in those instances, they have the discretion typically, and most of the time, if there wasn't a need to change itemized funding sources, they would go to Garrow and say, or there's a change order coming through. We regularly do those where it's similar to looking at the budget of the job and just saying, we're over here and we have to bring back a change order.
Okay.
So, if there's going to be a significant change in pricing, or if there is an unanticipated subsurface issue or the cost of goods, something along those lines, the change order would need to be brought back to adjust the budget.
Okay.
I think if you say traffic control there, if you tried to itemize that and then break it down, make them give you a price per barrel or per orange barrel or per cone or per flagman.
Yeah.
They're gonna give you price of $2,000 per barrel. You're gonna end up with the same $400,000.
Yeah.
You know?
They'll make it.
They're gonna make it fit.
They'll
So-
make it fit. There we go.
What you're asking for are really great questions. They really are. And that's why that you don't want single source pricing. That's why you want competitive bidding. And we don't have it here.
All right.
It's just not here.
We sent this project out to
I read this stuff.
5 or 6,
I
every
read every
contractor
word of
around.
it, every single word, and I understand that. I really do. But it's a fact that we have got to create competitive bidding. We've got to. You've got to have more involvement here than what you're getting. It's simple. It's not blaming you, Garrow. I don't blame you.
I don't know
one
what
bit. I
the answer
really
is.
don't. You need a
anybody's got
central,
suggestions,
you
we'll
need
certainly
a central person here. And it's a good time to say it right now.
And
Departmentally, this is what you get. It's not his fault. It
Mhm.
really isn't. That you don't have all that stuff that you just asked for.
But conversely, rather than itemizing, and I realize this has a lot of holes in it too, but offering incentives such that if they come under bid in certain areas, they're incentivized to do that without sacrificing the quality of workmanship. I don't know. I'm just throwing that one out as the converse to perhaps what the mayor was talking about as far as looking for itemization on the backside.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And the only other one that I had is probably the same thing, temporary construction exit. Is that, I'm trying to figure out, is the construction on the street that they're talking about? Like they're putting down the rocks to drive over whatever.
It is, that typically is located at their laydown yard that he
Oh,
was
where-
mentioning. And
Okay,
what that is it's a rock bed. It's an erosion control item. And it's a rock bed at the entrance, and the intent is that they drive over that rock bed and the set soil and sediment is kind of rubbed off of their tires before it's tracked onto the paved surface.
gotcha.
So
Okay, I see what you're, perfect. Those are my only questions. Any additional questions?
I'll make a motion to authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Woodward Construction Company in the amount of $3,682,879.20 for construction of the Macon Ave Talmadge Drainage Improvements Project.
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the usual sign of aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We will now briefly adjourn to executive session, matters of litigation.
A motion.
Motion. There we go.
Motion to adjourn to executive session
Hearing the first.
for litigation.
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by sign of aye.
Aye.
All those,
Uh,
hearing none, the motion passes. We are adjourned for executive session.
I need to know.
We have returned from executive session. No action was taken. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Motion.
So moved.
Got a motion to adjourn. Can I get a second? Commissioner Rowe, can I get a second? Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by sign of aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We are adjourned.
Good night, y'all. Thank you.